We got tons of juicy news and nuggets from the Rams joint practice session with the Texans. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and let us know. What do you think is the biggest X factor for the Rams to make the playoffs this season? My name is Doug McCain. Friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we've got some juicy nuggets from the Rams-Texans joint practice session. The Athletics' Jordan Rodriguez has some very interesting things to report. We're going to dive into everything that we are hearing from the Rams' final joint practice session. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay, Travis, so we are Jared Goff, Danny Amendola, Bryce Perkins, days away from opening kickoff. And yesterday, the Rams and the Texans, they had a joint practice session, and the best takeaway for me was, one, you had Mr. Matthew Stafford back at practice. And there was a little love fest between him and C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud said he asked him a lot of questions in the offseason. Stroud has been definitely shining up Matthew Stafford, talking about how underrated he is, how he has one of the best arms, and how he's a guy that he watched growing up. But really the big takeaway for me is that Stafford, in the 11-on-11 reps, he had a little rogue keeper, and with that keeper, the staff must have freaked out a little bit, but the fact that he's going on that keeper lets you know that hamstring is fine.
Well, yeah, so think about what we've seen from Matthew Stafford in some of these joint practices. We saw the rogue keeper, and we saw the deflected pass that he went and caught from himself and nearly got himself killed in the process. Like, I get it. I get that he's a competitive guy and that he's been around a long time and he wants to do it, but let's have a little bit of self-preservation kick in at some point for sure. But yeah, that he was out there, that he was able to do what he's able to do, and he got out of there in one piece. That's all very good news. These are the last really, quasi-live reps that he's going to have before we get to whatever's coming up in Detroit. So that's all really good news. I'm glad you brought up the part about him and C.J. Stroud kind of having a moment together, because I've always been struck by that C.J. Stroud obviously is on the other side of the draw, right? He's an AFC player, and I don't think the Texans surprised everybody last year. I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans won the AFC South, but there's very, very limited situations where Stroud and Stafford are going to compete against one another, right? They don't that opportunity of the Texans and the Rams playing for the whole thing is pretty long odds. But I always have that moment of, do you really want to share any secrets with these guys? You never know where he's going to go next. You never know where you're going to go next. And I get it. I like that they have a mutual admiration. I like that they're willing to kind of collaborate on what they see as quarterbacks. I like that Stroud holds Stafford in high regard, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me being a paranoid old man, but I would always be a little reluctant to give away too much. Like, hey, what do you do here? Like, yeah, that's up to you to figure it out, bro. I can't help you with that. I had to learn it. You got to go learn it.
Yeah, absolutely. C.J. Stroud sounded like Doug McCain talking about Travis Rogers. Okay, went fear fanboy on him. He says just how he manipulates guys with his eyes, his drops, his arm angles. I've been a fan of Matthew Stafford for a long time. I wasn't trying to be a fanboy today, but I asked him a lot of questions. I tried to just learn, and he was just really honest with me and wasn't mean, which I appreciate. So I'm definitely a huge fan of his. Definitely one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time. I feel like sharing a field with him was dope. And then Matthew Stafford said, it's humbling. I remember being in their shoes, thinking the same thing about Brett Favre and Peyton Manning. When I got to go against those guys at the beginning of the year, I'm not putting myself in that same breath, but the other guys, it was really a cool experience. I'll never forget playing with Brett, and when he was in Minnesota, I was in Detroit, and he came up to me and he was like, hey man, I'm a big fan. I'm like, you can't say that to me, right? I'm a fan of you. I've been watching you play forever. So it's cool to see the generations, and definitely Matthew Stafford being where he is and just kind of embracing that side of it. So like I said, I think you only do this with a select few guys. I mean, you do it with every single person, but I think CJ Stroud, the rookie year that he had, I think Stafford definitely certainly respects that.
I do too. And Stroud proved himself to be a really good player right out of the gate. He seems to take it really like I'm a CJ Stroud fan too, but I like what you said about, the quote he's talking about with Brett Favre and Peyton Manning, and him saying, I don't put myself in the category with those guys. Probably not Peyton Manning, because Peyton Manning's on the short list of greatest guys to have ever done this, but I don't know if he's any different than Brett Favre. We're talking about one Super Bowl championship. You're talking about a guy with a big arm. You're talking about a guy that has been, the one of the best in the business for a very long time. And this is why I'm so bullish on Stafford this year. This is why I'm so bullish on the Rams this year. Matthew Stafford is right on the cusp of just being universally accepted as one of the greats of his generation. I don't know, but because he was on the Lions for so long, and because the Lions weren't very good for the vast majority of the time he was there, I think we tend to downgrade his accomplishments just a little bit. Whereas one more good run through the playoffs, even if it's not a Super Bowl appearance or certainly a Super Bowl championship, but another appearance in the NFC Championship game where all of a sudden it's like, there's Stafford again, I really think could elevate his entire career. Make that, I know you've been talking about this a lot, make that case for the Hall of Fame. Make that case that aren't just pure counting stats. I know those are important, but those tend to get pushed further and further down because the game changes the way that it does. Playoff appearances, playoff runs, moments in the playoffs, I think are what could really elevate him into that category of Favre's, Manning's, those guys that are the greats of their generation. One more good run for the playoffs for Matthew Stafford, and obviously by association with the Rams, could really change his legacy in a dramatic way. And I hope it happens for him, not just because I'm a Rams fan, but because I think he deserves it, because I think that he's put himself in a position to do those things, but it's got to happen one more time. Like, we know this playoff history in Detroit, it was pretty limited. We know the great run to the Super Bowl championship. We know that last year was kind of a bonus surprise that they got in, but this is a year with expectations. This is a year where they got a good team. This is a year where they can make a little bit of a run. And I think it would be a great way to maybe not end his career, but be another great chapter in his career.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I'm always trying to make the case for Matthew Stafford in the Hall of Fame. He's one of those guys where you look at the accolades. Yes, the counting stats are there, definitely in the mix for yards and touchdown passes. But we look at the All-Pros. When you look at the Pro Bowls, 2 Pro Bowls, no All-Pros. Typically, Hall of Famers are sitting at the very least, on average, 7 Pro Bowls and 3 All-Pros. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't tell the whole story about just how good he has been throughout his career. I think a lot of that was his lack of team success on the Detroit Lions. But, yeah, for the Locked On NFC West preview show, got to shout out to my guys Brian Peacock and Clancy. They were giving me some because
Clancy any shout outs. He doesn't need any.
No, Clancy's the man. We went back and forth, man. You can go back and forth, man. I respect to him, but they were they were looking at me. So I was Mr. Bias. Who was my division pick? I was like Rams. Who's the MVP? Stafford, right? I was definitely wearing my Rams colored glasses during that NFC preview, but it's because I truly meant it. I mean, I really do think that Matthew Stafford with a better running game. I mean, a couple years ago, Rams 25th, 22nd in run game. Last year, they go up to 7th in the league. So he's going to benefit from that. You got Puka Nacua emerging. I think Cooper Kupp just quietly is on a mission to prove that he's still one of the best receivers in the sport. DeMarcus Robinson and Colby Parkinson as a red zone threat, and the offensive line where they're sitting at right now. Everything is set up for Matthew Stafford to have an elite season. And I think that, yes, we saw 41 touchdowns in 2021 when he went on to win the Super Bowl. We also saw 17 interceptions. I think you're going to see less touchdowns from Stafford this year, but also less interceptions than we saw in 2021. I think this is going to be his best complete season as a Ram, barring his health, of course. So we always have to use that as a caveat. But a big Matty Stafford year. I'm all about it. big Stafford house here. But coming up next, we're giving out more nuggets from the Rams joint practice with the Texans. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
This episode of Locked On Rams is sponsored by BetterHelp. So what are the things you do to take care of yourself, right? Those self-care things that you make sure that you take care of every single day. That we all get busy, right? We all got a lot of stuff to do. Maybe you have a family that you're responsible for. Maybe you got a lot of stuff going on at work. Maybe you've just got so many things that you got to get to every day that maybe you don't get to the stuff that makes you happy, even though you know that's the thing that's got to get taken care of. So this is where therapy can really make a big difference. And if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try, because it's going to help you get to those things that make you a better you. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just have to fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And of course, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Just find the person that works for you for sure. You got to make sure that you find a way to get to what you are about, to get to what makes you happy, make your days go by better. And this is where therapy can help, and BetterHelp is a great way to try it. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you. And the season is almost here, and you want to join that 5 episodes a week club. Definitely listen to 5 episodes a week on the pod, on the YouTube channel. Hit us up on the YouTube in the comment section as well, because we want to include those comments on the show. So definitely be sure Locked On. But here, Travis, in our second segment, we're going to pick up on the joint practice with the Texans. And it does feel like it was a very, very successful practice. They got a lot of things in. They had the ones going against the ones, the twos going against the twos. Matthew Stafford talked about how talented that Texans defense is. But one area I think is still pretty interesting is the running back spot. And Boston Scott, he's been dealing with a lower leg contusion. He's going to play Saturday, but the Rams did sign a second-year running back in SaRodorick Thompson on Thursday morning. So the first 3 running backs, they're a lock on the 53-man roster. You got Kyren Williams, you got Blake Corum, you got Ronnie Rivers. Those are the 1, 2, 3 spots. I still think Boston Scott certainly is going to be that number 4 guy. You saw the big, nice 34-yard run he had to ice the game.
Yep.
Against the Cowboys, and he has the ability to contribute on special teams, but you basically got a camp body in SaRodorick Thompson.
Yeah. Look, if you're playing in the 3rd preseason game, I don't think that's a great sign. Do I think he's going to make the team? Yeah, probably. But I mean, we know how Sean McVay treats the preseason. We know how little value he puts in the games that are played in the preseason. And that includes the first 2. The third one, every team, this is just kind of just throw it out there and see what happens. Let's just get off the field and get home and get ready for opening day. That you're in that game, I cannot imagine that makes you feel great about the spot that you are in the team. Going back to what you said before about, all the things that they got done at the joint practice, keep in mind, these are where the Rams get most of their work done in these joint workouts. The workout against the Cowboys, or I guess the 2 workouts against the Cowboys, the joint practice with the Chargers, the joint workouts with the Houston. Those are where guys are making decisions. That's where guys, like you just said, ones against ones. That's the only quasi live action that Matthew Stafford and all of these real, starting players are going to see. So what happens tomorrow morning on Saturday morning against the Texans is really unimportant relative to what we see in these joint workouts.
Absolutely. I think really if I had to take one thing from those joint workouts, other than Matthew Stafford being back and being healthy and me being able to sleep soundly for the first time in a while last night, is what happened on the offensive line. And it's very interesting how they're using Bo Limmer. Now, Bo Limmer, he's been getting a lion's share of the snaps at the center spot. And the reason for that is if Jonah Jackson can't come back healthy, is their best combination Bo Limmer at center and Steve Avila back in guard temporarily? Or do you have Steve Avila at center and then Zach Thomas at the left guard position? And not going to take a victory lap here, but did say that Bo Limmer was maybe going to be this year's Puka Nacua for the Rams as far as a late round pick that was going to emerge. It's not the star the Puka is going to be for sure, but Sean McVay is speaking extremely highly of him. He said, I like the command. I like the communication. What is he, a reliever? But I think you see a lot of the physical traits where he can come out of his hips and get more removal. I think he's getting more and more comfortable in the protection element. Bo has made some really good strides, and I think that's a credit to the guys around him, but also Ryan Wendell and Zach Cromer. So definitely it feels like they're leaning towards a Bo Limmer at center and Steve Avila at guard combination if Jonah Jackson isn't ready to go against the Lions in week 1.
Maybe Limmer is the Rams equivalent of Alex Vezia, one of those guys that you really don't plan on using all that much. It's like, hey, this guy's super important. We actually we're going to really need to lean on this guy. He gets a lot of guys out, or in Limmer's case, he could play, an important role to get you to whenever Jonah Jackson comes back. Obviously, Avila, the plan is to play him at center. Jonah Jackson was, I think Sean McVay, if I remember the quote correctly, was he's going to start working back in and getting closer. So I don't think this is something that they're going to have to deal with long term. But again, I think all of these pieces fit together ultimately, which is offensive line. The number one thing is, can you protect your quarterback? And in particular, can you protect your quarterback for the first 2 weeks because of the backup quarterback situation that the Rams find themselves in? So I don't know if completely shuffling everything is the right idea to where, all right, we're going to take our center and put him at left guard. We're going to take a backup and put him in the center position. So now we're maybe a little bit less at 2 spots. Not that Steve Avila couldn't go back to left guard and thrive, but he's been working as a center. So a little bit of a change. I would think that the easier solution is probably just leave Avila where he is and go to your backup at left guard in Thomas. But that there are options and that Limmer has forced them to consider options, I think is ultimately a good sign, and it speaks to their depth moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm of the opinion that if you truly believe that center is the best spot for Steve Avila as far as his ceiling goes, and he has the potential to be a multi-time Pro Bowl or All-Pro level center, well, then you start that process, you stick with that process, and it's really one of the big questions that we need to have answered is, when are we going to see this offensive line at full strength, and how long are these guys going to have to build that chemistry and cohesion? Because those are the big offseason moves. You re-sign Kevin Dotson. Jonah Jackson was the big offseason acquisition. It almost feels like an acquisition with Steve Avila if you're putting him in a spot where you can have more success at center when he was already a really good guard as a rookie. So it almost feels like we have 3 new potentially top-end offensive linemen, and then there's injuries to other key guys along that line too. I mean, if you look at the right tackle spot, Warren McClendon, he's still playing right tackle with Rob Havenstein dealing with an ankle injury. Joe Noteboom is still playing left tackle with Alaric Jackson dealing with ankle injury. And our guy, Logan Bruss, he's getting a lot of snaps as the reserve guard. So we'll see what happens. By the way, see Creed Humphrey, he did sign a nice extension there. It's not to do the Simpsons thing. Right? I'm not gonna do the Bart Simpson meme where say the line, say it. Why did you draft Creed Humphrey? Not gonna do it, but nice to see him having a good career. But I mean, look,
they have options. They have some depth that I still believe that Havenstein and both Jacksons will be back and healthy relatively quickly. But like you said, all the players that you just went through, there feels like there are some solutions or at least problem solving temporarily in some of these spots. I don't know if this is what we saw a few years ago where they just started dropping left and right and you were not ready to do it. I think that they do have some possible depth that maybe we didn't consider at the beginning of the season. But that being said, you got to get your ones out there as quickly as possible. And it's the NFL. Guys get hurt, guys go down. You hope you're on the right side of it. You're a little more lucky than unlucky. And so far, I think the Rams have been pretty lucky as far as their depth being up to the task.
No doubt about it. And it's going to be one of the biggest reasons why this team either has a lot of success or has an underwhelming season is the offensive line. And clearly things are trending in the right direction. But it's good to see, like you said, they have hit on some depth pieces, and that's key for sure as well. But coming up next, some more nuggets from the Rams joint practice with the Texans. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. Not just anybody, the right somebody, right? Professionals for the right role. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn is not just another job board. What LinkedIn does is it helps you hire professionals that you're not going to find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role, which might be the one that you have. In a given month, over 70% of users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, so feels like we're just at this joint practice session at this point. Everything we're kind of breaking down with it, but this next part I found extremely interesting. So Puka Nacua, he's still out dealing with the knee injury. McVay, he's been rotating Tyler Johnson, Xavier Smith, and Jordan Whittington into the role that Nacua plays for this offense. And Whittington, who was a running back in high school, and he played a lot of running back, was a 5-star recruit. A lot of the reports have him being possibly used in a run game as a little wrinkle there. So I found that pretty interesting as well. And he's also getting a lot of blocking reps too.
You know, it's funny. Like Sean McVay obviously has a incredibly sharp offensive mind. The Rams have never really struggled to score points or move the ball, and there's no real valid criticism, maybe other than can we run the ball a little bit more inside the 10-yard line of the way that Sean McVay runs his offense. So I say what I'm about to say with the understanding that he knows what he's doing and knows what he's doing probably to agree better than just about anybody else that's doing it in the NFL. Maybe save Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, they could throw him in a hat, take out, get what you want. The Rams don't have a lot of gimmicks, a lot of gadgets, a lot of weird things that you do. Say, okay, I've never seen that before. Jordan Whittington in the running game's kind of an interesting thought, right? Just I know we've seen some jet sweeps here and there with guys like Tutu going back to, some other guys but I wouldn't hate seeing just a little bit of, whoa, I've never seen that from a Rams offense. And whether it's Whittington or any of the other guys that maybe you do, I don't want to do it with Kupp. I don't want to do it with, Puka and the guys that I need to go down the field to make some plays. But having a little bit of a change up in your bag is something that I wouldn't hate to see from that Rams offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that also, too, just increases his value on this team is the versatility, what he can do on special teams. It just feels like he's a guy that's tough to deny this season, and he's forcing his way on the field in some capacity. So really excited for Whittington and what he can bring to this Rams offense. And now, as far as the 2-minute offense, it's one of the Rams' best periods because they were going run heavy on the 11-on-11s, and there was some frustration there. So Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, they got together, and they said, you know what, forget this. And Kupp ran one of his signature routes. They get a touchdown off of that. Tutu Atwell did drop 2 would-be touchdowns from Jimmy Garoppolo in the red zone. Both were very well-thrown balls, precise thrown balls, and Atwell did a good job to get past the coverage there, but wasn't able to secure those catches. And then in the 2-minute drills, they did a really nice job. That was really the highlight of the afternoon for that Rams offense. You had big gainers with Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Cooper Kupp, and you had a spot where they were just getting a lot of work in there and with the touchdowns on 34 yards. So, I definitely think that all in all, those are the highlights right there. As far as Whittington as a running back, Demarcus Robinson, Cooper Kupp look really good. But Tutu Atwell dropping 2 touchdowns from Jimmy Garoppolo, definitely probably a low light.
So, for sure. You drop a couple of touchdown passes. But again, I as the president of I've never bought the Tutu thing to begin with, I'm just going to kind of put that in the column and shrug my shoulders and say, yeah, whatever. Let's talk about the fact that Jimmy G put it on the spot a couple of times.
Yeah.
I think that's because Tutu Atwell is not going to be the guy he's throwing that pass to, right? If Jimmy G finds himself in a game, he's going to be throwing it to Puka Nacua. He's going to be throwing it to Cooper Kupp. He's going to be throwing it to Demarcus Robinson, and that he's finding the open guy, that he's able to put the ball in the basket, that he's able to put the ball in the money. That's a really good sign, because Atwell is not going to be the guy that he's throwing that ball to. He's going to be throwing it to the guys that do make plays, that do catch the ball. So I'll take that as a net positive for the Rams in the event that Matthew Stafford, misses some time here or there, that Jimmy G is sharp. That's good news for the Rams.
For sure. Absolutely. And he did make up for it later. He did have a big touchdown where he was really physical and in the red zone, but definitely a little bit disappointed to see him drop what was a dime by Jimmy Garoppolo for sure. But yeah, I mean, good to see CJ Stroud meet his idol. Thought that was very awesome. I will say, when it comes to Matthew Stafford, in the words of Don Corleone, never tell anybody outside the family business what you're thinking, right? I'm a reasonable man. I'm going to make him an offer. I can't. So, yeah, definitely keep those secrets to yourself. I don't want to see the Texans later. Remember when Kobe conned Reggie Miller to give him all those secrets and they met in the finals? Hope we don't see anything like that.
Exactly. Look, here's the best news of all. We're done. We got football. Then we got to get through one game tomorrow morning, Saturday morning against the Texans. We're going to come back next week. We're going to knock it out. And then we're talking about the Detroit Lions, a game that matters. We're going to see the ones against the ones. We'll see what that depth chart looks like. We'll know what the offensive line health is, but we got to get through one more meaningless preseason game before we can get into the next 4 months of real NFL football. And I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you are not going to see any meaningful impact players in this last preseason game because it's Sean McVay. And then that roster, Grim Reaper, is coming Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You got to trim that roster from 90 to 53 by 1 p.m. on August 27th. So, it's getting real. Kickoff is happening. We're Jared Goff away days from opening night in Detroit. But that's it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.